Hey, good morning, church. Today I've got my boys, and each of them have a buddy, and we are outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico at a place called Glorieta, doing a teenager camp, a student camp. And we start today, and it's 1,000 kids or so from all over the country. I hope that you will pray that God will bless this camp for us this week as we minister to teenagers beyond our church family. You have the privilege to hear from my friend Steve Carter today, who is an author and a speaker and a pastor. He co-hosts the Relevant Magazine Sports podcast, and he's no stranger to our church. He's been here before. I want you to put your hands together and welcome Steve Carter to the stage.
Good morning. Good morning. It's an honor to be back here with you all. Again, I love Pastor Alex. He's been just such a gift to the kingdom, a gift to me. It's an honor to be here. And anyone tuning in online or watching at one of the campuses, we're so grateful that you're here. I've been married for almost 15 years. I've got an 11-year-old son named Emerson. He looks like Gene Hackman. Not sure how that happened. I've got a daughter who's 6. We're huge Johnny Cash fans, so her name is Mercy June Carter, because June Carter just wasn't afraid to tell Johnny again and again that he needed grace and he needed the gospel, and it just transformed his life. So I'm hoping she will marry Johnny's grandson. So, man, I don't know about you, but do you ever just wonder why people do what they do? Like, do you ever just find yourself thinking back maybe to last week and you're like, why did I do that? Or maybe some words came out of your mouth and you're like, why did I say that? And it's already out into the atmosphere. And you're just like, what was I thinking? I've been fixated with this question. I don't know, maybe it's because I watch the news, or maybe it's because I'm following culture, or I find myself just aware of why are people making the decisions and the choices and the actions that they're doing? And why am I doing the same thing? And when you get to the book of Deuteronomy, Moses has some words for the Hebrew people before they enter into the promised land, and he wants them not to miss this. He wants them to live a unique, set-apart kind of life. And he says this in Deuteronomy chapter 30. This day I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you. See, anytime there was a covenant going to be made in the ancient Near East, you needed 2 witnesses. And Moses calls heaven and earth, which is just so awesome. That I set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life. Now, the word choose in Hebrew is the word Bahar. Let me hear you say Bahar. Well done. You can speak Hebrew. Now, here's the thing. When you see this word Bahar, this is what it means. What you choose, you boldly proclaim is the best possible way to live. See, this is what Moses wants the people to understand. Every decision that you make, it says something about you, about what you value, about what you believe is the best possible way to live. And what Moses is saying is, I want you to choose life, not death. I want you to choose blessing and favor, not curses, not pain. I want you to choose life. So you got to understand that all of the gods of the ancient Near East, their story was told through buildings and idols and statues. But in Genesis, we learned that our God, like an artist's studio, shaping with the dirt of the ground, put his Selem, that's Hebrew for image, his image into humanity. And he was like, by your choices, by your actions, by your words, by your love, you are going to showcase to the world what I'm about. So you got to understand that your choices matter. And our whole life is a set of choices built on one another that showcase what the fruit is all about. And for some of us, we're bearing fruits of the Spirit with our choices. Others of us, not so much. And I want to unpack this even more, because I want you to understand that sociologists will tell us that every one of us, on average, has 34,000 choices we make each day. Every day, having an opportunity. Some are small choices, some are big choices, but every choice is an opportunity for us to showcase what we value, what we believe to be the best possible way to live. And if you're like me, sometimes you just miss it. Sometimes you find yourself in a rut of just making selfish decisions or making choices based out of pride or out of a pain or wound. And as I began to kind of unpack in God's word, because God's word has insights and truths to help us today, I began to discover, man, I'm missing it. It reminded me of a story. I had a buddy of mine who I used to live with, and he was like, hey, do you like to run? And I was like, no, nobody likes to run. He goes, well, you don't understand. My family, we run like a 5K every year in our hometown. Would you like to come after we run? We go out to a steak dinner. My parents pick up the tab, and I was like, steak dinner? Okay, maybe I like to run now. And so a couple weeks later, I drove down 90 minutes, met my buddy at his hometown. I see his family, meet them, start stretching. I don't run, but I see all these porta potties, and I'm like, I should probably use that. And so I walk over there, and as I'm coming out, I'm being ushered and herded up to the starting line. I can't find my friend and his family, but I'm like, oh, I'll find him at the finish line. And I hear over the intercom, the announcer go, all right, runners, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, runner, go. And I'm like, all right. And I'm running. I'm not much of a runner. And I'm just getting tired. And I'm a little bit bitter because there's a guy probably in his 80s who's already ahead of me having the time of his life. And I'm like, I'm going to beat you. I'm going to beat you. And finally I'm like, dude, I feel like we've been running for so long. I look at this guy and I go, hey, man, I feel like we've been running forever. How much farther do we have to go? And he goes, hey there, brother. We just did 5 miles. We got 8.1 to go. And I said, I thought this was a 5K. And he goes, you're in the wrong race, dude. And I'm like, you're in the wrong race, dude. I know that now because I can't feel my thighs. And I'm like, I'm not going to quit. I must have looked so bad because some random woman stops and goes, would you like a peanut butter sandwich? Which was so bizarre, and I was thankful. I ate it, and I finally get to the finish line, and there's my buddy, and he's just smirking. And he's there, and I don't want to see him. I'm like, there's so many sinful thoughts in my brain going. And he looks at me, he goes, dude, you ran the wrong race. And I'm like, I know I did. Get away from me. And we go to the steak dinner. I can't even enjoy it. The next morning I wake up, and if any of you ever run a half marathon or full marathon, it hurts so bad to walk forward. Like I got out of bed and all I could do was walk backwards. It's like doing the moonwalk. Like I grab my Bible and a journal and I start writing, and I felt like this moment, and maybe it's because I had no endorphins or adrenals at all in my body, but I'm like writing, and I felt like God was like speaking to me, going, you are running the wrong race. Like you think that you are running this race, but you're running somebody else's race. And all these choices that you're making, they're not choices that are bringing life to you and life to others. They're not bringing blessings to you and blessings to others. And I just began to realize, man, I'm just choosing what everybody else is. And God began to really teach me about what it means to be a man who chases after holiness. What it means to be someone who actually fights to break cycles in the family. What it really means to be everything He created me to be. And I think for some of us, we're coming into a season where maybe there's been some bad choices we've made, some slip-ups, some decisions, some words that we've just spoken over our spouse or over our kids or over a coworker, and you just look back and you're like, I wish I could take that back. And I want to teach you straight from God's word how I think we can actually make decisions and choices that are much more aligned with the way of Jesus and not the way of our culture. If you have a Bible, you can turn with me to 1 Peter chapter 1. And in this, Peter's got some words. He's writing to a church that in many ways, they're just wanting to sit on the sidelines. They're dealing with persecution and suffering. They're in many ways don't want to engage. And Peter's going, no. He says this in verse 13, chapter 1, therefore, with minds that are alert and fully sober, set your hope on the grace to be brought to you when Jesus Christ is revealed at His coming. He's like, be sober, be present, be here, own this moment. Verse 14, as obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance. So don't make kind of the decisions that you used to make pre-Christ. You are a disciple. Make decisions that would model the way of Jesus. And then he says this verse 15, but just as he who called you is holy, Jesus is holy, he's calling us to be holy, so be holy in all you do, for it is written, be holy because I am holy. Now, this idea of holy, being holy, meant to be set apart. It meant to live a life that was whole. It was consecrated. It was on mission. It was living for a purpose. It was spiritually healthy. This is what we have been asked to be in this world, to be holy in all you do, with every decision, with every choice. And I read this, and I see the bar that Peter is proclaiming and longing for every one of us. But it makes me wrestle, why do I make so many choices that are unholy? Why is it that this person gets under my skin? Why is it that I found myself getting stressed in this time? Why is it in this moment do I want to just escape and hide in this place? Why is this moment that I tell myself a story over here? And in all of those moments, there's a situation that happens that prevents me or tries to prevent me from being holy. And if you're human and you're like me, maybe you can relate. I want to tell you a little bit about the city of Chicago. I used to live there for 6 years. I love the city. I love the Bears. This is our year. Now, maybe not. But here's the deal. When you drive in the city of Chicago, there's one thing that you've got to be aware of. Now, you got to understand that we know it's springtime in Chicago when the orange barrels are in full bloom. You just see construction cones everywhere. But when you're driving, you will discover this. Potholes, and they are everywhere. And here's the thing, I was driving and I'm swerving, trying to miss it, and maybe last year I actually hit one with my right front tire, and I knew right away I had a flat. I pulled the car over, and I'm like, oh man, I don't have time for this. But here's the thing, the city of Chicago has a number that you can dial to report a pothole. It's 311. You call that number and say, hey, I got a flat tire. And if someone's reported that pothole and the city has not filled in that pothole, they'll actually pay for your tire replacement, which is no wonder the city's going broke. But I called, and 311, I'm praying, like, please, clerical error, that it didn't happen. I was the first one to report it. But I end up having this conversation with this woman going, man, how many potholes do you all have if you got a number dedicated to it? She goes, well, the Chicago Tribune just did a story on how many potholes that we filled in from January 1st to March 21st. Can you take a guess? Which I hate these games. My dad used to always do this to me. Like, he knew the answer. He'd ask me a question. I'd guess. It was always wrong. I just said, why waste time? Just tell me the answer. And so I play along. I say, I don't know, 15,000. She goes, a little bit more. I go, okay, 25,000. She goes, a little bit more. I said, ma'am, would you just tell me? And she goes, you're not going to guess? I said, no. She goes, 190,000. I said, what? You filled in 190,000 potholes from January 1st to March 21st, 2018? She goes, yes. She's like, we even have a pothole tracker, and it looks like this, on the city of Chicago, where they show their work, which just makes me like go to like ADD mind. Like, can you remember like when you were like in kindergarten and you brought your dad to work? And all of a sudden, can you imagine just bringing your dad to work and like, hi, I'm Johnny. This is my dad. It's Khalil Mack. He plays for the Chicago Bears. And they're like, oh my goodness, it's amazing. Okay, Timmy, tell us about your dad. Yeah, my dad, he runs the pothole tracker for the city of Chicago. They're like, that guy's amazing, you know, let's get his autograph. I don't know. I just think it's the coolest thing. So here's what they do. They go to the pothole, and they see it, and then they understand that potholes typically are created because water freezes, asphalt doesn't have the elasticity, and so it creates a divot. So they just go up to it, add a little bit of asphalt, and they move on. And they check the pothole tracker box and go to the next one. But sometimes they go up to a pothole and they inspect it and they realize this wasn't caused by inclement weather. Actually, there's something happening underneath. Maybe the ground is eroding. Maybe there's a leaky sewage pipe, but something is happening. And if they don't address that problem, a pothole will quickly become a sinkhole. And this is what happened in the city of Chicago a couple years ago. A massive sinkhole where an entire street just sank. And a guy who was 70-something was driving and had the ride of his life. He's okay, but literally just sank. And here's what I need you to understand. Every one of us has potholes. From our past, from our trauma, from the decisions that we've made, from things that have been done unto us, spoken into us, over us, the things that we have decided to do that we thought was the best possible way, which wasn't. All of those potholes we have. And here's the crazy thing. Every day, there are people who are getting close to those potholes, and they rub up against them, or they speak into them, and it does something. It's what I call the thing beneath the thing, where we got to be able to get to it. But the first thing that we have to address is the triggers. And you've got to understand is that every one of us, every day, are being triggered. I remember a number of years ago, I came home one day and I was telling my wife about someone on my staff who reminded me of someone who had deeply hurt me. And I was looking for some sympathy. I was looking for some support. I was looking for her to have my back. And she just said, "Isn't God so kind?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "God's so kind because you haven't had the courage to address that area of your life. He keeps bringing people into your life until you honor the truth." And I looked at her and I said, "Get behind me, Satan." I didn't want to hear that, but she was right, like she always is. She was right. And here's the thing. Every day you are being triggered. And how you respond to this trigger is either going to lead you to holiness, to actually health and becoming more whole, or it's going to lead you towards unholiness. It's going to lead you to life and blessing, or it's going to lead you to death and pain and struggle. And your pothole is going to become a sinkhole. And here's the thing. Sinkholes don't just affect you. There's always collateral damage. Other people get drawn into it. And so, I want to look at 1 Peter chapter 2, and I want you to see this, because when you begin to understand, man, I get triggered, and there's a place that I go, man, I don't want to always go there. There's got to be another way that's better. When you begin to realize this, it's a game changer. So the first thing is, you got to understand, you are being triggered throughout the day. You are being triggered. Now look what it says in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 1. "Therefore, rid yourselves of all malice and all deceit." Peter's going to name 5 areas, 5 words where we tend to go when we get triggered. And the first 2, I think, are under the category of hiding. When some of us get triggered, man, there is this sense of something just, irritates us, hurts us, gets close to this wound or this trauma, and what's the first thing we want to do is we want to escape it. And we want to find something to soothe us. And so these 2 words, malice and deceit. Malice is an older word, but it's like almost this evil intent, and deceit is almost the sense of, I'm going to showcase one thing, but I'm going to go and do another. And for many of us, when we get triggered, we go straight to hide. And maybe it's socially acceptable ways of hiding. We're just on social media for 6 hours a day, and we're just numbing out. Or we're on Netflix, or we're just eating and eating and eating. Or maybe we're going to the store and we're just maxing out credit cards and we're buying something just to try and soothe. Some of it could be pornography, alcohol, opioids. There's in so many areas in which we are just trying to not deal with the wound or the pothole, but something triggers us and we're like, I just got to escape. I got to take care. I got to take care of myself. And you got to understand, in the beginning of the Bible, when the man and the woman were standing at that tree and there's that crafty serpent and he's like, hey, take a piece of the fruit. And the woman saw that it was pleasing to the eye and desirable for gaining wisdom. She took some, she ate, the scriptures say. Then she gave some to her husband and her husband's like, free food, I'll eat. And so he eats. And then the scriptures say they realize that they're naked. And the woman's like, I'm naked, that's so uncool. And the guy's like, you're naked, that's so cool. And like all of a sudden they feel anxiety and they feel shame. And the scriptures say they like try to cover themselves up and they make clothes. And then they hear God walking in the cool of the day and they go and they hide. And God's like, where are you? He's not like, where's your GPS location? He knows they're behind that rock. He knows where they are. What he's asking is a deeper, more real, honest, human question. Where are you? Where's the real you? Where's the potential? Where's the image that I made? Where's you? And for many of us, instead of addressing that and leaning into it, we hide. We go and we hide. Where do you hide when you get triggered? Where do you go to numb and soothe and take care of yourself? And sometimes it's not always the best decisions. But for many of us, when we get triggered, we go into hiding. The second place we'll see, it says, get rid of all malice, all deceit. And then there's two more words. It says, hypocrisy and envy. So get rid of malice, get rid of deceit. And then it says, hypocrisy and envy. And here's what I want you to see, is these two words fall under what I call insecurity. See, when many of us get triggered, we find ourselves telling a story about ourselves. And the story usually is, I'm not good enough. I'm worthless. I have nothing to offer. Something triggered us, and it's usually connected to shame or pain or a wound, and then it's like, I'm nothing. And for many of us, that insecurity leads us to hypocrisy or leads us to envy. And hypocrisy, in the word in Greek, literally meant actor. Many of you know this, like in amphitheaters that were massive in the ancient Near East, 25,000 seats outdoor. You'd have two actors. The one would have a backpack, and inside the backpack would be a whole bunch of masks. Think like Iron Man and like Spider-Man and Batman. And they would like put on a mask and they would become that character, down the mask, put on another one, become that character. And this is what a hypocrite became. But there was another word in Greek. It's the word sincere. And sincere is made up of two words. First one is not, and the next word is hypocrite. And it literally meant to drop the mask and allow yourself to be seen and to be known. When's the last time you felt triggered and insecure, and instead of putting on a mask and kind of just trying to pretend or perform or please or perfect, you allowed yourself to be seen and known? The other word is envy. And envy is a dangerous word. The Proverbs will tell us people who struggle with envy, they have no structure, they have no bones. Because envy is difficult. See, for many of us, we think the word covet and jealousy and envy are the same. But they're wildly different according to the scriptures. When it comes to coveting, I can covet my neighbor's car, but I can't be jealous of my neighbor's car, because you can only be jealous, according to the scriptures, of what belongs to you. God can be jealous for our attention and our heart and our time because we belong to God. My wife can be jealous for my time. I can't be jealous of what my neighbor has. I can covet it and I can envy it. But envy is a little bit darker. Envy is, I don't like that you have it. And envy is based on an economy of scarcity. And back in the ancient Near East, they only thought there was a certain amount of goodness from God. And so if someone received favor and blessing, the rest of the town would become envious, and they would basically have this evil eye. You see it in the scriptures, this evil eye where they would wish ill will on that person, hoping that they would get sick or they would lose their fortune so the goodness could be released up into the atmosphere, and hopefully I might get it. And for many people, when they get triggered and they tell themselves a story, I'm not good enough, they start to look at other people. They start to look at other people and look what they have. And they start to go, man, I'm just worthless compared to that person. I have nothing. And all of a sudden, man, it just eats at us. Sometimes when people get triggered and they get insecure, they actually power up and they start having more pride and they start acting like they have it all together. When, let's just be real, none of us have it all together. You might be really, really good in some areas of your life, but we are all on the journey. Ruth Bell Graham, Billy Graham's wife, have you ever seen her tombstone? It literally has her name, the date, and this phrase, construction completed, thanks for your patience. It's genius, because we are all being built. We are all being transformed. We are all on a journey. And for some of us, when our pride kicks in, you miss it. When you get triggered, what story do you tell about yourself? Is it a shameful story? Is it a prideful story? Is it a story where you put on a mask? Is it a story where you start looking at other people? There's another place that we go when we get triggered. And it's the fifth word. Get rid of all malice and deceit, yes. Get rid of hypocrisy and envy, yes. And then it says all forms of slander. And here's what happens. Sometimes when we get triggered, we create a narrative about another person or another group of people. And we start to slander them. We start to speak ill will towards them. We start to rage against them. We start to lash out against them. We start to gossip. And gossip's like Plato theology, where literally like you are shaping and forming someone, not in the image of God, but into your word, your image, showcasing it to the world, and people are starting to believe that. And friends, this is what the news does. This is what I feel like sometimes social media can do. This is what bullies do. This is just what happens when we start to shape and form. And oftentimes it's because someone got triggered. They felt small. They felt insignificant. They didn't feel important. And so they create and they lash out. Sometimes when you get cut off when you're driving, and somehow someone didn't care about your family or didn't see you, and you felt, I wasn't seen, and so what do? You lash out. And so all of these moments where you start to go, how do I become a person who makes decisions that are based out of a whole place, a holy place, a spiritually healthy place, and not make unholy decisions? Peter says there's another area and another place that you can go. He says this, like newborn babies, crave pure spiritual milk, so that by it you may grow up in your salvation, now that you have tasted that the Lord is good. Here's what I need you to see. When you get triggered, you can go into hiding. When you get triggered, you can go into insecurity. When you get triggered, you can tell a story. But every one of us here today, when we get triggered, we don't have to choose unholiness. We can actually choose God. We can choose deeper relationship with God. And to do this, I love what Peter says. You got to put yourself in the mindset of being like a newborn baby, where like you need help. And you got to have this craving, this longing, this hunger for that pure spiritual truth. And when you experience that, God's going to actually begin to heal you. And when he heals you, you will be able to say, I've tasted and seen that the Lord is good. Can I just tell you, the people that you respect the most can do this. And the one thing that I believe every sincere, healthy, whole Christ follower has is this: humility. They've humbled themselves to say, I got potholes, and I don't want my potholes to become a sinkhole. They've humbled themselves to say, I got trauma, I've got wounds, I've got addictions, I've got pain, I got sin, I got struggle in my life. And some of it was handed down to me from my parents and grandparents. And I'm going to break that cycle. And some of us in this room, the most courageous thing we can do is raise up a white flag and say, Lord, help me. Have mercy on me. I'm a sinner. I'm not perfect. I got potholes everywhere. Help me, help me, help me. But it takes humility. I remember when I was in college, I needed a haircut. I had long hair. And there was a big function. I was playing college basketball. We had a big event. And so I went to Supercuts, but there was too long a line. So I went to Great Clips, too long of a line. And I remembered in downtown Orange County, Fullerton, there was a thing called a salon. I'd never been to a salon before. I'd been to a saloon, but never to a salon. And so I remember showing up to this salon. I walk in, and I'm like, hey, obviously, I need a haircut. And they're like, it's going to be $30, $19.99. I was like, yeah, that's a lot of money, man, but I got you. I'll pay right now. He goes, $30? I said, I know I don't look like much right now. I can pay you and tip right now. I just need a haircut today. He goes, okay, can you fill this out? I said, I'm not looking for a job. I just need a haircut. He goes, no, we do this so that our stylist knows what to talk to you about. I said, man, California's weird. And so I just start kind of filling this thing out, turn it in, I sit down, I wait about 10 minutes, and then someone from the back, from the Holy of Holies, comes out, calls me by name. I stand up, I feel like I don't know what's gonna happen. I walk up, she shakes my hand, she goes, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna wash your hair. I said, thank you. She goes, I'm gonna cut your hair. Fantastic. And then I'm gonna style your hair, and you're gonna be good to go. I said, this is amazing. She said, the only thing you need to do, you need to go into this closet and you need to put on a schmuck. I said, a what? A schmuck. I said, what's a schmuck? She goes, inside this closet, hanging up will be one black schmuck. Take your shirt off, put the schmuck on, come out here. We're going to wash your hair, cut your hair, style your hair. You're going to be good to go. I said, this is amazing. I walk into the closet. There's one shiny black schmuck. Take my shirt off, I put it on, and it's really, really tight. And the buttons are on the other side. And so I start the button. I can only get to right here. So all 4 of my chest hairs are just there. And I'm like thinking to myself, this is so weird. And then I'm like, this place is so stuffy and bougie. Like, let's have some fun. And it's like the spirit of Tommy Boy came over me. And I decide to open up the door. And I'm like, I'm going to break this woman. And I just start to like dance. And I'm like, fat man in a small man schmuck. And I'm like, and she's looking at me like her eyes are so big, she's not saying anything. And I'm like, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna break you. I'm gonna make you smile. Some women are laughing, and I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. And like I'm going, and then I scan over here, and there's like this adorable 70-something-year-old woman, curlers in her hair, and she's looking at me through the mirror, and then she whips her chair around. She screams, "What's this young man doing wearing my shirt?" I tell you this because there are times when you get humbled. And you chose it. You chose it. But there are times when you read 1 Peter chapter 5, and it will say, in the same way, humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. There is a decision that every one of us as disciples have to make. We have to be willing to say, I got issues, I got struggle, I got addictions, I got problems, I got potholes, and I'm willing to humble myself and say, I need help. I need help. In Carrie Underwood theology, there comes a moment where you got to say, Jesus, take the wheel. And you just literally have to say, I can't do this all in my own strength. And that takes guts. And that takes a desire to crave more of Jesus. But it's easier to pretend that our marriage is awesome and that our finances are killing it and that we don't have struggles and we don't have pain. And the truth is, all of that stuff came from somewhere. Somewhere. And God, in his kindness, wants you to be whole and holy and spiritually healthy, so he's going to keep reminding you of these potholes until you have the courage to trust him and the strength to lean in and address it. Here's my question. When you get triggered, where do you tend to go? When you get triggered in your everyday, where do you tend to go? Is it into hiding? Netflix, social media, pornography, overspending, overeating, just overworking? Where do you tend to go? Or do you go to insecurity? You start to tell yourself a story. I'm nothing. I'm worthless. I have nothing to offer. And it's just shame storm raining down on you. And that's not who God made you to be. Or is it to a narrative? Yeah, maybe I'm feeling this, but you know who's going to feel worse is this person. And you just slander and rage and lash out and gossip about another. But what if we were the kind of people who, instead of choosing those three places, that we actually got rid of malice, deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and all forms of slander, and we actually chose, when we got triggered, to say, time out. God, would you help me? Would you heal me? And I think there's something powerful when you can do this. Your faith becomes alive. It becomes real. Here's my question. What today is preventing you from being whole, holy, and spiritually healthy? What's stopping you from leaning in and trusting God? And maybe for some of you here today, you've never said yes to Jesus. You're like, I don't even know where I begin. And please, we'd love to talk to you about it. Maybe for some of you, you're like, I got to struggle. I don't know where to begin. You know, the most holy first step is help. 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 And when you have the courage to ask a mentor, a pastor, a loved one, and you bring them in, man, some amazing fruit can come and healing can come from it. Now, here's what I love to do. I love just to kind of set up a little bit of a response time. And we're gonna sing a song in a moment, but before that, I'd love to ask you some questions. And I'd love just to have a time of just prayer, to pray for you, and to really try to see, maybe God's Spirit, I believe God's here, we've been singing it, God's in this house. And I believe that God's Spirit wants to speak to your heart, wants to heal you. He doesn't want your potholes to become sinkholes. He wants you to be whole, holy, and spiritually healthy. And so, would you mind just closing your eyes? Maybe for some of you, you might want to open up your hands. If you're like me, I just need to allow my posture sometimes to lead my heart. And there's nothing like magical about this, but it's just opening yourself up. We live in a culture that's so good at achieving and performing and striving. But you know what? Grace and healing is all about receiving. Receiving. I believe that God has something for some of you today. I always begin with gratitude. Just take a moment. Just think in this past week how God has been so faithful to you. You have breath. You have life. Last month, I lost my dad. And he just stopped breathing. Breath is life. It's a gift. It's a gift. The family that you have, the job that you have, the church that you have, it's a gift. It's just moments and simple breath prayers of thanks be to God for what you've given to me. Don't let me take it for granted. But then there's these moments of just honest and human. When you look back at the last week and go, where are those areas that I did that I wish I could take back? Instead of shaming it, don't shame it. Get curious. What triggered that? What triggered that reaction? Why did I go into hiding? Or did I tell myself a story? Or why did I create a story about another person? Get curious about your triggers. Ask the Spirit of God right now, God, give me insight into what are my potholes, what are my triggers? Because when you can name those, then you know how best to ask for help. And then here's the real work. Where do you go? Where are you running to? What's the counterfeit God that you're running to soothe and care for yourself instead of turning to the one who made you, shaped you, formed you, and loves you more than you could ever love yourself? And ask God for the courage to get help, but ask God for the courage to not choose that. And for some of us, we're choosing it because that's what was modeled to us. And today could be a day where you actually break a chain. Today could be a day where you declare, I'm going to end that cycle. Today could be a day where you say, God's Spirit set me free. I need that. And when you experience that kind of fruit, that's when Peter says, you will taste and see that the Lord is good. That's what I want for you. And so God, I pray just for favor over this community. I pray for courage. I pray that we'd be the kind of people who can get to the thing beneath the thing so that potholes don't become sinkholes and so that other people in our life don't actually kind of struggle with the collateral damage of our choices. Let us be brave in choosing life and blessings, not death and pain. Let us make decisions that are holy and whole and spiritually healthy. And God, I just stand up here and I just can't even imagine if 6,000 people that call this church home were holy and spiritually healthy. I mean, what kind of life would they bring to Tulsa? What kind of life would they bring to the dinner table? What kind of life would they bring to the marketplace? I mean, this church, if people got serious about getting to the thing beneath the thing, man, not only would they flourish, but they would be the kind of people that others would see and go, I want what she has. I want what he has. I want what that family has. And that's when we get a chance to give a reason for the hope that we have, and that hope is you. So Jesus, please, do a work in this church. Use this church. And may they be a compelling force for good in Tulsa, for Tulsa, and throughout Tulsa. We pray all this in your name, and everyone said,